17 days to die, 4 years to be destroyed. Anne Boleyn by a French sword, Marie Antoinette by a French machine. Who died worse? Let's prove it. Tonight's question: Anne Boleyn versus Marie Antoinette. Which royal execution was truly worse? Not just more gruesome, but more shocking, more perverse, more fundamentally wrong by the standards of their own time. Because here's what your high school history teacher didn't tell you. Both deaths were carefully orchestrated political theater, where the cruelty was the point and the mercy was just part of the show. Welcome to Historical Verses, the channel that puts history on trial. We'll judge these executions across 6 secret criteria, each with a different weight. The percentages are set, but the reasons, well, you'll discover those as we put history on trial. If it's close, our tiebreaker asks which execution more fundamentally shattered the social contract. But here's the twist that changes everything. Henry VIII paid extra to import a French swordsman for Anne's merciful death, while French revolutionaries used their humane guillotine on Marie. Why did both regimes insist on French killing methods? We'll answer that later. Let's start with what these women were before they became history's most famous severed heads. May 1533. Anne Boleyn is crowned Queen of England in Westminster Abbey. She's already pregnant with the future Elizabeth I. Henry VIII has literally broken with God, split from Rome, upended 1,000 years of religious tradition just to put this woman on the throne. He spent 7 years fighting to divorce his first wife for her. Anne isn't just a queen, she's the woman who changed England forever. The crown on her head represents the birth of the Anglican Church itself. October 1774. Marie Antoinette, at 18, becomes Queen of France. She's a Habsburg princess, sister to the Holy Roman Emperor, married to Louis XVI to cement the greatest diplomatic alliance in Europe. Versailles bows to her. She commands the most opulent court in history. When she enters a room, even duchesses stand. She is, quite literally, the most powerful woman in the Western world. You walk through the Tower of London today, and there's a glass memorial on Tower Green. Beneath your feet, Anne Boleyn's bones lie in an unmarked grave. Well, unmarked until Victorian archaeologists went digging for their Gothic thrills 3 centuries later. They found her skeleton crammed in an old arrow chest, no coffin prepared for a queen. You stand in the Place de la Concorde in Paris, formerly Place de la Révolution, and tourists take selfies where Marie Antoinette's head rolled into a basket. Her body was dumped in a mass grave covered in quicklime to dissolve it faster. No funeral, no marker, just erasure. Both women went from the heights of power to judicial murder in shockingly little time. Anne had been queen for barely 1,000 days. Marie Antoinette went from Versailles to scaffold in 4 years. But here's what matters for our verdict. These weren't just executions, they were statements, messages, demonstrations of new terrible truths about power. When a king kills his queen, he's saying no one is safe from his will. When a people kill their queen, they're saying the old world is dead. But which is worse? Which breaks more fundamentally the compact between ruler and ruled, between husband and wife, between a nation and its sense of self? That's what we're here to determine. Think Anne's verdict is obvious? Watch how a queen was legally erased in just 17 days. Then decide. You're in Greenwich Palace on May Day, 1536. The spring tournament is in full swing. Knights charging, crowds cheering, Anne Boleyn presiding as queen in the royal box.
She drops her handkerchief to a knight below, a standard courtesy of courtly love. Henry VIII suddenly stands and leaves without a word. Anne will never see him again. That handkerchief? It's about to become evidence of adultery in the fastest show trial in English history. Here's the first shock, the sheer speed of Anne's destruction. 17 days. That's all it takes, from arrest to execution. 17 days, that's it. You're arrested May 2nd, tried May 15th, dead May 19th. Modern death row inmates wait decades. Anne got 2.5 weeks. But the real perversion isn't the timeline. It's what Henry does to the law itself to make this happen. See, in 1536, you can't just execute a queen. There's literally no legal precedent, no template. The clerks at Chancery have to invent new paperwork because nobody's ever written an execution warrant for an anointed Queen of England before. Think about that. You're a government bureaucrat, and your boss asks you to draft something that's never existed. The legal form to kill God's anointed queen. Where do you even put the royal seal on that? But Henry's already thought ahead. 2 years earlier, he passed the 1534 Treason Act. This little gem makes it high treason to maliciously wish, will, or desire by words or writing harm to the king. Not plan, not attempt, just wish, by words. Thought crime is now a capital offense. And here's the kicker. If the queen commits adultery, that's automatically treason because she's theoretically wishing the king dead so she can marry her lover. It's the kind of legal logic that would make Orwell slow clap. The charges against Anne are magnificent in their absurdity. 5 lovers, including her own brother George. The dates they list? Provably impossible. On one occasion, she's supposedly committing adultery in Westminster, while court records show she's in Greenwich, physically recovering from a miscarriage. It's like being charged with robbing a bank while you're documented giving birth in a different city. But nobody's laughing in the Tower of London's Great Hall when 2,000 nobles pack in to watch the trial. You want to know how predetermined this verdict is? Henry Percy, Anne's former fiancé, the man who once loved her, is on the jury. He literally collapses when delivering the guilty verdict, has to be carried out. Even Anne's greatest enemy, Imperial Ambassador Chapuis, who calls her the concubine in every letter, admits she and the men were condemned upon presumption and certain indications without valid proof or confession. Now here's where it gets truly dark. While Anne sits in the tower believing she might still get exile or a nunnery, Henry's already planning the wedding. He's on his royal barge, with musicians playing, ladies laughing, wine flowing. Chapuis reports it sounds badly in the ears of the public that the king is literally partying while his wife awaits death. The night before Anne's execution, Henry is writing love letters to Jane Seymour. The morning of, he's dressed in white. Either celebrating or mourning, historians still argue which. But wait, defenders of Henry say, maybe Anne really was guilty of something. After all, she was famously flirtatious, witty, French-educated. She played the game of courtly love. Maybe she crossed a line. Let me dismantle that for you. Anne takes the sacrament before her execution, swearing before God she never offended with her body against the king. In the 16th century, that's not something you do lightly when you're about to meet your maker. Every single one of her alleged lovers, except Mark Smeaton, denies the charges, and Smeaton only confesses after being tortured. George Boleyn, her brother, goes to his death insisting on their innocence. Sir Francis Weston leaves a letter declaring he dies wrongfully. These men could have saved their lives by confessing and begging mercy. They choose death over lies. Now we reach May 19th, 8 in the morning, Tower Green. This is where Henry's cruelty takes its strangest turn. He's imported a specialist swordsman from Calais, paying him £23, a fortune, to execute Anne. Why? Mercy, supposedly. A skilled swordsman means one clean stroke versus potentially multiple axe blows. How thoughtful. You're murdering your wife, but you're doing it humanely. It's like using organic poison. The consideration is touching. Mercy outsourced. Anne climbs the scaffold in a grey damask gown trimmed with ermine. She's composed, too composed. She actually makes a joke to the constable about her little neck, laughing at her own upcoming decapitation. The crowd of carefully selected witnesses, maybe 200 nobles and officials, goes silent. This is invitation-only regicide. No commoners allowed at this murder.
She kneels upright. No block. That's the French style. The swordsman actually tricks her, calling out, "Bring me the sword," to make her look away. Then, one stroke, clean. The witnesses are so quiet you can hear the head hit the scaffold.
Within 11 days, Henry marries Jane Seymour. But here's what should really chill you. Parliament passes an Act of Attainder after Anne's death, posthumously declaring her guilty. They're so unsure of the verdict, they have to reconfirm it when she can't defend herself. Even more telling, they never specify which of her alleged lovers was supposedly the father of the fetus she miscarried. Because they can't. Because it was Henry's. Because the whole thing was a lie. Verdict after the fact. Yet Henry got away with it. No rebellion, no divine retribution. Just a new wife, and eventually that son he wanted. Anne's execution worked exactly as intended. It demonstrated that Henry's will was absolute law. But was this controlled, surgical cruelty worse than what happened to Marie Antoinette? After all, at least Anne's humiliation was private, her death swift, her dignity somewhat preserved. Unless you count what happened to her reputation afterward. If Anne's execution was surgical, Marie's was a parade, and the pre-show was 4 years of character assassination.
You're in the Conciergerie prison, October 1933. The cell reeks of mildew and human waste. You're looking at Marie Antoinette, except you wouldn't recognize her. Her hair has turned completely white at 37. She's bleeding constantly from what historians delicately call feminine troubles, probably uterine cancer. The woman who once spent the equivalent of $2 million on a diamond necklace now owns 2 dresses. The revolutionaries are about to put on the greatest show trial in history, and she's the star attraction, whether she wants to or not. October 14th, 1793, the trial begins. Marie Antoinette has been given less than 24 hours to prepare her defense. Her lawyers receive the case file the night before. The Revolutionary Tribunal, that's what they actually call it, they're not even pretending this is regular justice, has already decided the verdict. This is theatre. But even in this kangaroo court, the prosecutors worry they don't have enough. Treason? Sure, she wrote to her brother, the Austrian emperor, but that's politics. They need something visceral, something that will destroy any sympathy. Enter Jacques Hébert, radical journalist and professional Marie Antoinette hater. He spent years calling for her death in his newspaper, Le Père Duchesne, where he refers to her as the Austrian tigress, who must be shortened by a head. Now he delivers the prosecution's masterstroke. Marie Antoinette committed unspeakable acts with her 8-year-old son. The courtroom goes silent. They bring in little Louis Charles, now called Citizen Capet. The boy has been imprisoned separately, brainwashed, probably abused himself. He stands there and in a small voice accuses his mother of corrupting him physically, of committing acts of moral depravity with him and his aunt. The prosecutors beam. This is it, the ultimate degradation. Marie Antoinette says nothing at first. When pressed, she stands and delivers the only response that matters. I appeal to all mothers present. Is such a crime possible? For a moment, just a moment, even the market women in the gallery who came to watch her burn feel something crack. Some murmured disapproval, not of her, of the prosecution. Robespierre himself, when told about the charges against her maternal virtue, reportedly explodes. That imbecile Hébert, he's given her the chance to become sympathetic. But sympathy doesn't matter when the verdict's already written. Guilty on all charges. Death within 24 hours. This wasn't justice. It was theatre. How did that accusation land at all? Because by then Paris had been primed to believe anything about her. Starting in 1789, France experiences the world's first explosion of truly free press. No censorship, no limits. And what does this glorious democratic freedom produce? Thousands, literally thousands of obscene pamphlets about Marie Antoinette, not political critiques, salacious libels. The Austrian whore. Titles too vulgar to repeat, graphic illustrations of the Queen of France in compromising situations that would make modern tabloids blush. One popular pamphlet depicts her in intimate encounters with her supposed female lovers, male lovers, multiple lovers at once. They call her l'Autrichienne, the Austrian, but it's a pun that also means the Austrian bitch, combining her foreign birth with the French word for female dog. This isn't fringe material. These pamphlets sell hundreds of thousands of copies. Street vendors hawk them outside Versailles. Children sing obscene songs about the Queen on street corners. By the time she faces trial, the average Parisian has consumed 4 years of propaganda portraying their Queen as a creature of boundless depravity who bankrupted France to fund debauchery. But wait, say the defenders of the revolution, this was necessary. Marie Antoinette represented tyranny, foreign interference, the starvation of the people while she played shepherdess at Versailles. Let me dismantle that fairy tale. Marie Antoinette never said, "Let them eat cake." That quote appears in Rousseau's writings when she was 9 years old in Austria. The diamond necklace that caused such scandal, she actually refused to buy it. She was framed by a con artist. Her supposed control over weak Louis XVI, she had less political power than most royal mistresses. Her actual crime was being Austrian when France needed a scapegoat, female when France wanted someone to blame for masculine failures, and alive when the revolution needed blood. The morning of October 16th arrives. Here's where the distinction between Anne's execution and Marie's becomes stark. Anne gets a private scaffold, selected witnesses, dignity in death. Marie gets the full public humiliation package. First, they cut her hair with sheep shears, not carefully, roughly, like shearing an animal. She's stripped and forced to change into a plain white shift in front of guards. No privacy, no dignity. When she asks for a moment to relieve herself, they make her do it in the corner of the cell while they watch. Then comes the tumbrel, an open wooden cart, the kind used for hauling garbage. She has to stand because sitting would be beneath the crowd's sightlines. Her hands are bound behind her back so tightly the rope cuts into her wrists. This journey will take over an hour through streets packed with tens of thousands of Parisians. You want to know what democracy looks like in year 2 of the Republic? It looks like mothers holding up children to get a better view of the bound woman in the cart. Street vendors selling programs listing her crimes. People singing the Saira, the revolutionary anthem, that includes the line, "The aristocrats to the lamppost." Some throw mud, some spit, some just stare at what was once the Queen of France. The artist Jacques-Louis David sketches her as she passes. His drawing survives. It shows a haggard woman, jaw set, staring straight ahead while Paris screams around her. She looks already dead. At the place of revolution, the guillotine waits. The crowd is massive. Contemporary accounts say between 20 and 30,000 people. They've been drinking since dawn, treating this like a festival. The guillotine, painted red, stands 15 feet high. They call it the National Razor, Madame Guillotine, the People's Avenger. It's supposedly humane. Death in half a second. Democratic equality in execution. Everyone dies the same way, king or commoner. Humane? Only if you ignore everything around the blade. As Marie Antoinette climbs the scaffold, she accidentally steps on executioner Charles-Henri Sanson's foot. Her last words, "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." Even facing death, she apologizes for minor discourteousness. The crowd doesn't care. Nobody had to look her in the eye. That's the terror of a crowd. At 12:15 p.m., the blade falls. Sanson grabs her head by the hair, holds it up for the crowd. They roar approval. Vive la République! Blood runs into the scaffold's grooves, dripping onto the packed earth below. Some citizens dip their handkerchiefs in it, revolutionary relics. Her body is thrown in a cart. No coffin.
They dump her in a mass grave at the Madeleine Cemetery, cover her with quicklime to dissolve the corpse faster. The Queen of France gets less dignity in death than a pauper. But here's the real kicker. The execution solves nothing. France is still at war, people are still starving. The terror continues, eventually devouring even the revolutionaries who killed Marie Antoinette. Hébert, who pushed the incest charge, guillotined 5 months later. Fouquier-Tinville, the prosecutor,
Guillotined in 1795.
Even Robespierre, Mr. Incorruptible himself, dead within 9 months. They proved killing works until it works on you. They killed their queen to prove kings and queens don't matter. Instead, they prove that when you normalize killing, eventually everyone's neck fits in the lunette. So who had it worse? Surgical cruelty or public degradation? Let's score it. Warning, it's uncomfortably close.
The cases have been made, the evidence is in. It's time for the final showdown. Let's reveal the 6 mystery criteria I hinted at earlier and see how the final score breaks down. Remember, this isn't about which death was sadder, both were tragedies. This is about which execution more fundamentally violated the norms and expectations of its time. On legal perversion, weighted at 25%, how badly did each regime have to break its own rules? Anne Boleyn. Henry VIII literally invented new laws to kill his wife. The 1534 Treason Act made thoughts treasonous. The trial presented physically impossible evidence. Even the paperwork had to be created from scratch because nobody had ever executed an English queen before. That's a 9 out of 10 for legal perversion. Marie Antoinette. The Revolutionary Tribunal was designed for political murder, but it was following its own twisted rules. They gave her a trial, however farcical. The revolutionary system was built for this. That's a 7 out of 10. But here's the twist I promised about those French execution methods. Henry paid premium for a French swordsman because French execution was considered more sophisticated, more civilized. The Revolution chose the guillotine because it was French engineering at its finest, rational, efficient, egalitarian. Both regimes wanted French-style killing because France was seen as the pinnacle of civilized execution. The irony is thick enough to choke on. On public humiliation, weighted at 20%, the deliberate degradation inflicted. Anne Boleyn, semi-private execution, allowed to dress as queen, gave a final speech, treated with formal respect even in death. Yes, they crammed her in an arrow chest, but she didn't know that was coming. That's a 4 out of 10 for humiliation. Marie Antoinette, shorn like a sheep, stripped before guards, paraded through Paris in an open cart for an hour while thousands jeered, executed before a carnival crowd. That's a perfect 10 out of 10 for humiliation. On contemporaneous horror, weighted at 20%, how much did it shock witnesses at the time? Anne Boleyn, even her enemies were stunned. Chaput couldn't believe it happened. Henry Percy collapsed. The silence at the execution was deafening. But many English subjects actually celebrated. Catherine of Aragon's supporters saw divine justice.
That's a 7 out of 10. Marie Antoinette, Europe recoiled in horror. But in Paris, they cheered. They literally cheered. The radical press celebrated for weeks. It shocked the powerful, but delighted the mob. That's a 6 out of 10 for actual shock value.
Now here's something nobody talks about. Both women made jokes before dying. Anne joked about her little neck. Marie Antoinette, when told to be brave, reportedly said, "Courage, the moment when my troubles are going to end is not the moment when my courage is going to fail me." Dark humor on the scaffold. Maybe that's the most human response to inhuman treatment. On propaganda backfire, weighted at 15%, how badly did the execution damage the executioner's reputation? Anne Boleyn, Henry's reputation never recovered. He's remembered as a wife killer first, king second. The execution haunted the Tudor dynasty. Elizabeth I spent her entire reign rehabilitating her mother's memory. That's an 8 out of 10 for backfire. Marie Antoinette, initially seen as revolutionary justice, but within a year, everyone involved was dead or disgraced. The execution became the symbol of revolutionary excess. France spent the next century arguing about it. That's a 9 out of 10 for backfire. On personal betrayal, weighted at 10%, the intimate cruelty of who ordered the death. Anne Boleyn, killed by the man who broke England to marry her, the husband who wrote her love letters comparing her to a goddess, who waited 7 years to possess her, then destroyed her in 17 days. That's a 10 out of 10 for personal betrayal.
Marie Antoinette, killed by the people in abstract. No single betrayer, just mob justice. She never expected mercy from the revolution. That's a 3 out of 10. On historical echo, weighted at 10%, which death reverberates more? Anne Boleyn. Every British schoolchild knows divorced, beheaded, died. She haunts the Tower of London, literally according to ghost tours. Her daughter became England's greatest monarch. That's an 8 out of 10 for historical staying power. Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake, which she never said, might be history's most famous misquote. She's the universal symbol of doomed royalty. Her death marked the end of European absolutism. That's a 9 out of 10. When we tally up the final scores, it's incredibly close. Anne's execution, driven by the intimate cruelty of a king, scores a 7.45. But Marie's, a spectacle of public degradation, just edges it out with a 7.5. It's so close, it comes down to our 0.2-point tiebreaker threshold. So we invoke our tiebreaker. Which execution more fundamentally broke the social contract of its era? Anne's death broke the compact between husband and wife, king and queen. It was intimate violence dressed as law. Marie's death broke the compact between a nation and its entire social order. It was civilizational violence dressed as justice. The tiebreaker goes to Marie Antoinette. Hers was the worst execution.
Numbers settle debates. They don't settle history. Here's the paradox you'll remember tomorrow morning. Marie Antoinette's execution was worse. Not by much, a razor's edge, you might say, but worse nonetheless. The numbers are close enough to call it a tie, but when we ask which execution more fundamentally shattered the social contract, the answer becomes clear. Anne's death was a husband murdering his wife with extra steps. Marie's death was a civilization murdering itself in public. But here's what those numbers don't capture: the ultimate historical irony of both executions. Henry VIII and the French revolutionaries didn't just fail to erase these women, they accidentally immortalized them. Think about it. Henry executed Anne to marry Jane Seymour and secure a male heir. That male heir, Edward VI, died at 15. Henry's dynasty ended with Anne's daughter Elizabeth, who became England's greatest monarch precisely because she learned from her mother's fate never to marry, never to give a man that power over her. Anne Boleyn is remembered. Jane Seymour is a footnote. Henry is history's most famous wife killer. Mission accomplished. The French revolutionaries executed Marie Antoinette to destroy the monarchy forever. Within 11 years, Napoleon crowned himself emperor. Within 22 years, the Bourbon monarchy was restored and Marie Antoinette's body was exhumed and given a royal burial at Saint-Denis. Today, more people visit her cell at the Conciergerie than visit the graves of the revolutionaries who killed her. Robespierre doesn't even have a grave. His body was dumped in a mass pit with quicklime, just like hers. Except nobody dug him up for a state funeral. You want to know the real difference between these executions? It's not the method or the crowd or even the cruelty. It's what they represented about power. Anne Boleyn's execution said the king's will is absolute. There is no safety from royal whim, not even for a queen, not even for the mother of his child. The law will bend, break, or be rewritten to serve one man's desire. That's the horror of absolute monarchy. It's personal. Henry could look Anne in the eye and order her death. He knew her laugh, her voice, the feel of her skin, and he killed her anyway. Marie Antoinette's execution said the people's will is absolute. There is no individual too high to escape mob justice. The abstraction of the people can kill with less hesitation than any king because no single person bears responsibility. That's the horror of revolutionary terror. It's impersonal. Nobody had to look Marie Antoinette in the eye and take responsibility. The crowd killed her. The Republic killed her. History killed her. Everyone and no one killed her. Both executions were meant to demonstrate strength. Both revealed weakness. Henry showed he was so insecure he had to murder his wife to remarry. The Revolution showed it was so fragile it had to murder a powerless woman to feel powerful. But here's the fortune cookie insight that reframes everything. They killed queens to kill the past and made them eternal instead. Every time someone visits the Tower of London, Anne Boleyn lives. Every time someone misquotes "let them eat cake," Marie Antoinette lives. Their executioners tried to erase them. Instead, they wrote them into history with blood. Legal contortions, public humiliation, shock value, propaganda backfire, betrayal, echo, we measured it all. The verdict is in, but history is never that simple. Who gets your vote? Cast your judgment in the comments below. If you want to see what worse than the guillotine looks like, tap the video on screen. Roman crucifixion versus Persian scaphism. It will recalibrate merciful. Subscribe for the next trial, history's greatest deception, Trojan horse versus D-Day's Operation Fortitude, when the method is the misdirection. Thanks for watching Historical Verses.